Hi, I'm George Hager from the USA Today Editorial Page. Congress is about to come back from their summer break for a short session before the November elections and then probably a lame duck afterwards. To talk about that, we're here with Delaware Democratic Senator Tom Carper. Thank you very much for coming in, Senator. And I'd like to start off with something that's an issue you're very closely identified with, the Postal Service. It's been losing hemorrhaging money for the last several years, and yet Congress doesn't seem to be able to get anything done. Do you think that'll change this year?
During the recess, I was back in Delaware with my wife. We're driving around, and we're actually driving by a cemetery, and she said to me, what would you like to have on your tombstone? And I said, honey, I'm not that old, and I feel fine. Like, why would you ask that? And she said, well, no, really, what would you want? And I said, spending all my time as working on postal issues, I said, how about return to sender? How about return to sender? For those of you who are our age, you probably have some idea where that song came from. But the Postal Service, this is something that can be fixed. This is not an impossible task. They've done a lot of work to reduce their headcount down by half, reduce the number of mail processing centers down by half, to not eliminate a lot of post offices across the country, but some of the ones where they don't do much business, to reduce their hours and save a whole lot of money. The key, two key challenges here. One is how to make sure when we pass legislation to make sure that it allows the Postal Service to innovate and find ways to make money using a 200-year-old distribution network in a digital age. That's a big challenge. And the second one is they, unlike most major employers, they pay a whole lot of money into Medicare trust fund, more than any employer in the country. They don't get full value for that. When their folks retire, the Postal Service can't say to them, oh, you've got to get covered on Medicare Part A, Part B, Part D, and we'll provide a wraparound plan for you. That advantage does not inure to the Postal Service. Those are the two things most important for us to fix.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you on behalf of us postal customers out there whether those of us who like getting our mail on Saturday are going to continue getting our mail on Saturday.
Dr. Coburn, Senator Coburn of Oklahoma and I have legislation that would actually provide say to the Postal Service, you've got to continue to deliver on Saturdays. If the mail volume drops below 140 billion pieces a year, right now it's 158 billion, it drops below 140 billion pieces of mail a year, then, and you're losing money, then you can go from 6 to a 5-day week service. We need to incentivize postal employees to work harder, to sell more, and we need to encourage the mailers, magazines, catalog people, others to mail more. And I like the idea of having incentives. They keep the numbers up, and we'll continue to have 6-day week service. As it turns out, they actually are delivering a lot on Sundays, and they can really make money doing this. They deliver a lot of packages and parcels these days, and they do priority mail deliveries on Sundays. So they're actually, for right now, it's almost like 7-day week service.
Completely different topic, ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. We're talking about, in fact, we're already bombing them. Where do we go from here on that?
I think we've seen this movie before. We saw it when George Herbert Walker Bush was president. When Saddam Hussein came in and rolled over, Kuwait squashed them, and raping, pillaging, taking and destroying their country. And George Herbert Walker Bush, our president, said enough. And he said, we're not going to let this happen. And they put together, what he did is he put together this huge coalition of countries all over the world. It was certainly NATO, some of our other allies, but it was Arab nations and all. And the Japanese sent money, others sent boots on the ground, and some did other things in the air. But it was a huge coalition, and it worked. And it wasn't just us out there by ourselves. And in this case, it's a great opportunity to repeat history, to put together that huge coalition. We do our part. It shouldn't be all on us, but to provide strong moral leadership. And the folks in Iraq, they don't want to be led by these guys. Most of the people they don't want an Islamic State where we share law and where the women are repressed. They don't want that. And we need to provide help, but not just by ourselves, but help to put together a coalition and lead it, and basically squash these guys, squash these bad guys. They're barbaric, and we should not tolerate this.
It's been awful to see 2 American journalists beheaded by these guys. But is ISIS a threat to the national security of the United States?
Yeah, if we ignore them and let them fester and continue to create this Islamic State, and then they'll say, well, now we have an Islamic State, now what do we do? Well, why don't we just see what we can do to export terror and mayhem around the world? I think the idea is to crush this effort, allow Iraq, I think they have actually a very promising new leader, and to help put together a bit of a coalition that his predecessor never was able to do, and we're there to do that encouragement. Then let them be the boots on the ground.
Are you worried at all about jihadis, fighters with ISIS who have European or American passports who can get into the United States and Europe without visas coming back here?
Yeah, I'm worried about it, and I think we'd be foolish not to be worried about that. We work 24/7 in this country to try to better ensure that bad people who wish bad things for our country don't get in. They don't have the opportunity to do mischief on airplanes or even inside of our borders. And do I worry about it? Sure, I worry about it. And if we stop worrying about it, we'll be in real trouble.
President Obama has been getting a lot of criticism on ISIS and saying we don't have a strategy, and on Ukraine and so on. What's your view?
Well, among the things the administration is doing that I think are really smart, one is supporting a transition government, get Maliki out of the way, and to be willing to support really a consensus candidate, a guy who's a Shia. They're majority Shiite in Iraq, but someone who's trusted by the Sunnis, trusted by the Kurds, and a very wise person. And he's the kind of a conciliatory leader that can help unite the country. That's huge. The other thing is we have huge advantages in the air. And the ISIS people, they've taken over a lot of our equipment, but they're in our tanks and our armored personnel carriers, and they're exposed. And what we can do is not be the boots on the ground, but we can be out there doing tactical air support, and we're doing that well.
You're a Democrat. Are you going to be in the majority after the elections this fall?
I think today it's a jump ball. It's to jump ball. I've always said that at the end of the day, the keys are the economy and how well the Affordable Care Act is working to make healthcare more affordable and actually more cost effective. If you look at the economy, we're seeing the number of people that are filing for unemployment insurance is like half of what it was 5 years ago. The deficit's down by 2/3. And we are actually seeing for the first time in a long, long time, healthcare costs in this country as a percentage of GDP going down, and actually outcomes actually getting better. I think at the end of the day, if we can address some of these international issues, like what's going on in Iraq, at the end of the day, people will actually vote their pocketbooks, and they'll actually stop and listen to some of those 10 or 12 million people in this country who have health care today, who actually think it's actually a pretty good thing.
Quick questions. We've only got 1 minute left. Two things Congress has had serious trouble with lately: a government shutdown, that is paying to keep the lights on in the government, and raising the debt limit. Both of those are coming up soon. What's your take on what's going to happen?
I think Democrats and Republicans have been chasing the idea of shutting down the government. It doesn't help our country, and frankly, it doesn't help either party. The other thing, it's hugely wasteful. This idea of stop and go government is wastes a ton of money. And frankly, the same is true with transportation funding. The idea of not fully funding 6-year transportation bill, stop and go, eyes and nose, an old governor, that's a huge waste of money. You just can't do that and build these transportation projects. So I think we've learned a lesson. I sure hope so.
Senator Tom Carper from Delaware, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And if you'd like to see more on these topics, please be sure to go to the USA Today editorial page online at usatoday.com. Thank you.